In the year 1323 BC, Egypt suddenly found itself without a pharaoh. Tutankhamun, the boy king, died at just 19 years old. He left no heir. His reign had lasted only 9 years. The country was draped in official mourning, but the real darkness was only beginning. Ankhesenamun, his widow, was left completely alone. She was barely 20 years old. Behind her, 2 marriages to her own brothers and 2 deaths. No husband, no son, no protection. Egypt never forgave an empty throne, and it hated a woman who dared to claim it. Around her, the shadows gathered. The high priest I was already measuring himself for the crown. General Horemheb controlled the army. They were not allies, but they both saw Ankhesenamun as an obstacle to be removed. She had no army, no faction, not a single person she could trust. Even her own servants may have been bribed by her enemies. Every shadow in the palace could hide a knife. Every meal could be her last. She knew that if she did nothing, she would be killed, or imprisoned, or simply erased from history. But to act meant betraying everything Egypt stood for. And yet, she made a decision that would shock the entire ancient world. She wrote to the Hittite king Suppiluliuma I, Egypt's most dangerous enemy. She knew this was treason. If the letter was intercepted, she would be executed on the spot. But she had no choice. The words she wrote were not diplomatic formulas. They were raw, desperate, and they would change everything. The letter reached the Hittite capital, Hattusa. A dusty courier placed the clay tablet in the king's hands. Suppiluliuma I, the great king, could not believe what he was reading. An Egyptian queen, the widow of a pharaoh, was begging him, her enemy, for help, a plea that defied all tradition. He read the words twice. The silence in the throne room was absolute. "My husband is dead. I have no son. Send me one of your sons. I will make him pharaoh of Egypt. I will never take one of my own subjects as a husband." The words were treason. They were desperation. They were also the opportunity of a lifetime, the chance to claim Egypt without a single battle. Suppiluliuma read them aloud to his advisors. No one spoke. Suppiluliuma had fought Egypt for years. He had won battles, but never a final victory. Now, Egypt was offering itself to him, not by conquest, but by marriage. A prize that had eluded his ancestors for generations. He suspected a trap. A queen desperate enough to betray her own country might be desperate enough to betray him. He sent an envoy to Egypt to verify her words. The envoy returned with a second letter, even more desperate than the first. "Why do you think I am trying to deceive you? If I had a son, would I write to a foreign king with such a humiliating request?" The words burned. They stripped away all pretense. There was no diplomacy here, only raw, naked need. Suppiluliuma hesitated no longer. The risk was real, but the reward was Egypt itself. He chose one of his sons, Prince Zannanza, and prepared to send him south. The die was cast. The prince gathered a small escort and gifts for his future kingdom. He was young, perhaps still a teenager. He must have dreamed of the golden throne waiting for him. He left the capital, Hattusa, and began the long journey south, through the mountains of Anatolia, across rivers, toward the border of Egypt. He never arrived. Somewhere along that road, history fell silent. His fate would become one of the greatest mysteries of the ancient world. Somewhere on the border of Egypt, the trail of Prince Zannanza went cold. Nobody, no witnesses, no explanation. Only silence. Suppiluliuma raged. He accused the Egyptians of murder, a betrayal that demanded vengeance. Ankhesenamun swore in her letters that she had nothing to do with it. But who would believe a queen who had already betrayed her own country? It no longer mattered. The die was cast, and the queen's enemies were closing in. their shadows growing longer with each passing day. Somewhere on the border of Egypt, the trail of Prince Zannanza went cold. No body was ever found. No witnesses came forward. No explanation was ever given. Only silence. A silence so heavy that it echoed through the courts of two empires. The Hittite king waited for news. Days passed. Then weeks. Nothing. When the truth finally sank in, Suppiluliuma erupted in rage. He accused the Egyptians of cold-blooded murder. He demanded answers. He threatened war. Ankhesenamun wrote back, swearing she had nothing to do with it. Her letters grew more frantic. But no one in the Hittite court believed her anymore. The damage was done. The prince was dead. What really happened to Zannanza? Historians still argue today. The first theory: he was assassinated on the orders of I, the high priest. The old man had already seized the throne and could not allow a foreign prince to claim it. A small Egyptian force could have intercepted the prince on the border and killed him without witnesses. The second theory: Zannanza died in a random border skirmish. Egyptian guards, not knowing who he was, attacked his small escort. By the time anyone realized the mistake, it was too late. The third theory: he was poisoned during the journey, perhaps by those who did not want a foreigner on the throne of Egypt. None of these theories have ever been proven. But the fact remains: Zannanza vanished, and with him, Ankhesenamun's last hope. Back in Egypt, her position became unbearable. I and Horemheb no longer hid their intentions. They saw her not as a queen, but as a threat that needed to be eliminated. She knew the sentence had already been pronounced. She was living on borrowed time. She ruled for only a few months after Zannanza's disappearance. Those months became a waking nightmare. Every shadow could hide an assassin. Every meal could be poisoned. She trusted no one, not even her own servants. And then the end came. Not with a dramatic battle, not with a public execution, just silence. She vanished from history as suddenly as she had appeared on the throne. No one knows exactly how she died. Was it poison? A dagger in the darkness? A natural death that was anything but natural? The official records are silent. They were rewritten by the men who succeeded her. Her name began to disappear from temple walls. Her images were chiseled away. Her tomb, if she ever had one, was hastily repurposed for another ruler. Her mummy has never been identified. Archaeologists have found unnamed female remains in tombs from that era, but no one can say for certain. Is this her? Her enemies tried to erase her completely, as if she had never existed. But the stones remember what men tried to forget, and clay tablets do not lie. I became pharaoh. He ruled for only 4 years, a short, anxious reign, constantly looking over his shoulder. Horemheb waited. He controlled the army, and he was patient. When I died, Horemheb seized the throne. Then he began to destroy the memory of everyone who had come before him. Tutankhamun, I, and Ankhesenamun. He wanted the world to believe that he alone had restored order. But the letters Ankhesenamun sent to the Hittite king were not destroyed. They lay in the royal archives of Hattusa for over 3,000 years. When archaeologists dug them up, they found the voice of a young widow who had dared to ask her enemy for help. A woman who tried to survive in a world that wanted her dead. A woman who almost changed the course of history. Ankhesenamun was not a great builder. She left no pyramids, no temples, no obelisks. She did not lead armies. She did not expand the empire. Her legacy is not stone. It is a question. What would you do if the whole world turned against you? Would you fight? Would you flee? Would you write to your enemy and beg for mercy? She played the most dangerous game in the ancient world, the struggle for the throne of Egypt. And she lost, as almost everyone lost who dared to stand between the hungry eyes of power and the ancient traditions of the pharaohs. But her letters survived. Her voice did not die. The clay remembers. And the question she left behind is still waiting for an answer. Would you have dared to write that letter?